Hi there, welcome to the Church of Nowhere, and I suppose no church will be complete without its list of thou shalt nots. You know, somebody wrote a review of the Quran a bit cheekily many years ago, and they said their impression of the Quran was it was just a load of injunctions against throwing stones at the notice on the grass saying, "Do not walk on the grass." I don't know. I would have thought that, well, the five pillars of Islam are rather positive, really. But his impression was that the Quran was all just negativity and things you're not supposed to do, rather than things that you're supposed to do, and things that Muslims are against, rather than things that Muslims are for. Okay, I think you'd have to read the Quran to make up your own mind about that, really. But that was their impression. So anyway, I suppose churches have to have their rules. I mean, I suppose a rule has an advisory function, really. Certainly a wisdom saying. I mean, if you're going to ask somebody, who's been married for, I don't know, 40 years, how did they do it? Or even somebody who's 109, how did they do that? I mean, they might give you some advice. I don't know how valid this advice will possibly be, but they might give you advice, or they might just sort of say, "I don't know how I got here, but here I am," kind of thing. So that might not be very helpful to you. So, anyways, I think churches are sort of obliged really to come up with a whole load of "thou shalt nots," which might seem a little bit kind of negative. But on the other hand, perhaps it's better to refrain from action rather than acting, and then having regrets about how you acted because you can't take an action back. Whereas if you just have a thought, you can take a thought back without acting on it. But once it's gone into the field or realm of action, there's no turning back, and then you might have consequences and critiques and even censure or even condemnation for your actions. So thou shalt not have the role of saying to you, look before you leap, or don't do that. Don't be rude, because once you're rude, and words are actions as well. You might not be able to take the rudeness back either. You might make an enemy for life there, when that person could have been your friend or colleague or helpmeet or something like that. So that I'm just saying, that not all wisdom is fuddy-duddy stuff to be ignored because it comes from a white-haired old bloke with a beard. That you don't like old blokes with beards, and you don't like the picture of God being an old bloke with a beard, throwing thunderbolts around. But supposing that the old bloke with the beard is right about things, and you've just stereotyped this old bloke as being an idiot, when in fact he knows a lot more than you do about life. Do you know what I mean? And that as you probably read through this list now, the sort of "thou shalt not" do these things that are on this list, like stereotyping, for example. But probably the best thing to do, really, is for me to go through each of these in turn, because I suppose they all deserve a video. Each deserves a video in its own right. I can't just sort of hammer through all this list, because it wouldn't be very nuanced, and it'd be a bit garbled and a bit ranty. And you'd get a bit anti, wouldn't you, with that kind of video? And I think my videos are too long as it is, and YouTube still recommends only literally 3 minutes for your video. Otherwise, you lose an audience straight away, and you lose most of your audience straight away. So little is good. Simple is good. Little is more, actually, in the context of YouTube videos. So I'm going to leave you with this list as I draw around it and over it, and I'm going to come back to each of these points in different videos at different times, and also I will have more time to think about these points as well. And so I can present, 2 or 3 minutes of things which are actually going to make some sense to you and might be some of use to you. But that's all I wanted to say on having a list of things to avoid in life. And they just have an advisory function. They're only in an advisory capacity. They're not thou shalt nots. And if you do them, we're going to stone you to death. Like, you know what I mean? Isn't like Monty Python and the Life of Brian kind of thing. At least we hope it's not going to be like that. Although I think women do really, perhaps the women enjoy stoning people to death, like in the movie. Anyway, I'll park it there, and I'll come back to all these exciting points as and when I can, and as and when I have a little bit more idea about them. But I mean, if you want to comment on any of these points that I put on this whiteboard, then please do, or ask questions about them. That'd be great.